All right, now we welcome Drake Toll into the Minor Lounge. Drake is the co-host of Up Tempo on SicEm365 Radio every weekday from 11 a.m. to 2 p.m. Drake just got off his show today, Friday. How are you doing, Drake?
Oh, man, I'm doing awesome. Today's show was really good. I feel good. Another awesome week. We're 3 weeks into Up Tempo, and honestly, I can't ask for anything better. The show's been great.
That's awesome. It's been such a ride. 3 weeks in, it feels like it was just, the start of the year where you were kicking off the show and everything like that. Do you mind taking me through, like, how did, I know you were doing some post-game shows for SicEm365 Radio and, for during the football season. How did Up Tempo come to be?
Honestly, Andrew, I was showing somebody a text yesterday that I sent to Colt Barber, who runs SicEm365. I say a text. He had tweeted a picture of the studio that they're in now. And there were 4 or 5 pictures, and he was like, upcoming new and whatever. This was probably September. And I commented on there. I was like, if you need anybody to drop out of college and sweep the floors, I'll do it. And so basically from there, he sends me a message, sends me a direct message, and he says, hey, what's your schedule look like? And so I was like, okay, maybe this is legit, so we kind of did some banter in the Twitter comments, and nothing really came of that. Oddly enough, it never really worked out that I could come in. I wasn't really looking for an internship at the time. I was doing some other work. And so lo and behold, I got connected with JD Piquel, really in a really odd fashion. It's a whole different story. But as soon as we got connected, we hit it off really well. I got the gig doing play-by-play at China Spring High School. And I called him and said, do you want to be my color guy? And he was like, yeah, I'll do it. He said, yes, drop of a hat. And so a couple of days go by and I call him back and I was like, hey, thanks for saying yes. We'll pay you this much. And he was like, wait, I'm getting paid? And he had no idea. He had said yes, thinking he'd make no money just for us to get to work together. And so about week 2 of the post-game show that they were doing, somebody couldn't show up. So JD called me. He was like, hey, we need to fill in. Do you want to do it with me this week? And I was like, yeah, I want to do it with you. So we show up that first show. I thought we killed it. We really nailed it. And they gave me a call the next day. Like, look, we loved what you did. We want you to come in full time, do every post-game show. And so I said, okay, I would love to. And so at that point, it was just for experience. We get about 4 or 5 weeks in and they start talking like, man, we love this dynamic. We love what's going on here. The people, a really good reception. And they said, we were thinking of making it into a show. And I had no idea the timeline of what that would be. And I remember Colt called me. First time I ever talked to him, was like, look, man, we really want to do this. We actually want to do it. And so they kind of pulled the trigger on it right there in November, December. A lot of people had thought we were jumping the gun by doing it. And had a lot of questions about it, but Colt said we're going to run with it January 4th. So we kept it under wraps, started preparing, and then really from September, sending a message saying that I'd love to come in and sweep the floors, to January 4th, we kick off day 1 of Up Tempo with JD and myself. Kind of a crazy ride to get into it, but honestly, and I know that was really long and convoluted, but man, the story to get where we are is kind of crazy.
No, that's awesome. I mean, Twitter place is the marketplace of the internet. I have a good friend that says that, and just bringing people together. I think that's terrific. Sweeping the floors, then you need to fill in. You get called, tapped on the shoulder, and you're coming off the bench, ready to play, ready to fire some jumpers. So, I guess. I really think your dynamic with JD is terrific. It's definitely palpable. You can feel it on air whenever you're listening. You mentioned that it was a unique story meeting up with him. Just real quick, I guess, how did you get engaged with him, and how did you guys get the chemistry going? Just like that, drop of the hat.
Man, it's kind of unbelievable the way it all happened. He came in as a grad student, had just played football at Cornell. He was a Baylor football player until he medically retired due to a concussion. And so he came to the Baylor Lariat where I worked at the time, and I got to meet him. I got to kind of show him around a little bit. And I was like, man, this long hair, like big smile guy, he kind of, I don't know that I was rubbed the wrong way at first, but it was like, this guy's coming to steal my job. Like I just thought like, this guy's stepping up here. Like he's going to take my spot. And so we kind of talk, and what scared me the most is how good he was at what he did. And just how personable. And so I thought, man, more so than being competitors, I just love to work with this guy. I just really fell in love with his personality. And so after that, he ended up not taking the job at the Lariat. So we met each other once. Kind of hit it off from jump a little bit. And then after that, didn't see each other for a while. I get a text from him one day. He was like, hey man, he needed some tips on something journalistic. And we kind of got talking again. And then, next thing you know, I run into him here or there. And it was like, man, I really would love to work with this guy one day. So we would talk on the phone. Like, hey, if the opportunity ever comes up, you just call me, we'll get together, we'll do something. And so met spur of the moment at the Baylor Lariat. And all I remember is everybody that we ran into would be like, yeah, you should work with him, but make him cut his hair. Like that was the big thing, was he had to cut his hair to work in journalism. That was his thing. He said, my one thing, he said, I'll never cut the hair. He said, no matter where I work, I'll never cut it. And so kind of hit it off from jump before we even worked together. Decided to pull the trigger and do games with one another, and then man, the rest is history. I love his delivery. I love the way he does things. He's a cool cucumber, and I think he really complements the duo really well.
Yeah, you guys in the hair, man, both blonde. Like it's just something about it. Definitely, it goes with the whole atmosphere, the whole environment of that.
It's a vibe. It's a vibe, as the kids say.
Vibe, yes, yeah, keeping it real. I'm curious to know, kind of what did you learn the most from doing those post-game shows during the football season to where now you're running 3 weeks in a show every day, 3 hours a day? I mean, that's real legitimate radio that you got to fill some content there.
Yeah, with the post-game show, I knew that it was much easier than doing an actual network radio 5 days a week because it's caller-driven. It's 1 hour. On a Saturday, people are passionate about Baylor football. There's something to talk about. They want to call and get their input in.
Right after the game.
So, absolutely, yeah. It's right after. It's immediate. The final, it would hit 000 and we're live. And people walk into their car, they're tuning in, and the numbers were great. And that really fired me up to know that, hey, people like what we're doing. We were growing. People were coming back to what we were doing. And so that I learned in that number one, the most important lesson that I may have learned was that I could do it, that I could sit at the desk, that I could be in front of the microphone and conduct some kind of content that was live for an hour. And so that confidence helped me into, what's next, what's bigger, well, what can we do from here? So while I learned a lot in that, it was exponentially easier. We would sit down, open the phone lines, and they wouldn't stop. They would just stay, that red light's just blinking the entire show. And so then you get into a 3 hour show and it's like, all right, where's the red light? Where's anybody? So it's different, but I definitely learned through the post-game show that, hey, I love this. I really love what I'm doing, and this is what I'm meant to do, and that I want to keep taking steps. And I think starting up tempo was the next step.
That's awesome, and definitely a next step, huge for you and your career here. What drives your content? What do you go? Take me behind the scenes, the planning session of Drake and JD, where you're like, all right, what should we talk about this week, or how do you plan? What have you been doing, kind of behind the scenes to produce the show?
Man, Andrew, I'm going to let you in on a little secret. And it's something that I never thought I would say. And I hate saying it because I know it's going to change at some point. But we really don't do very much in depth. There are a lot of shows where JD and I will not talk from 2 p.m. on Monday to 11 a.m. on Tuesday. We won't have a conversation. He walks in at 10:55 on Tuesday and says, hey, what do you want to talk about today? And that kind of it generates where we go with the show. Really the format of what we do, for me, I wanted it to be, let's talk about what people care about. So when there is something that's going on that day in Baylor sports or in the college realm, we want to talk about it. And so we want to give our takes, have good banter, bring on callers. I say that too, though, there's a lot that goes into guests and guest planning. That is my A1 right now, because I know that to be treated as a legitimate, hey, we're a show that's here to stay, that's going to bring consistent content, I think step one is to bring on guests that matter. My philosophy with guests is that I'm not going to bring someone on the show that you turn our program off because they're on. I want to bring somebody on a show that you turn us on. Hey, I want to hear what this person has to say. So we're not filling time. We're bringing on somebody that's meaningful. And right. So from a preparation standpoint, it's a lot of work with guests and SIDs and athletes and coaches. But from a content standpoint, as far as just things to talk about, I'll be honest with you. We have a group message on Twitter. And if we see something that catches our eye on Twitter, we'll just shoot it in the group message and like, hey, let's talk about it tomorrow. And that's the format. We want to talk about things that are relevant in the now, and that, no college kid, no listener is sitting at home digging around for content that they want to know about. They're not going in the doldrums to find things that are like, oh, maybe this is interesting. We want to talk about what's on the forefront. What are people talking about naturally? And so that's kind of our goal with the show, and it's worked out so far.
Yeah, and right away, hit the ground running. Baylor hires the OC, a lot of coaching activity, hires, dismissals, things like that going on. And then you got the BYU beat reporter to jump on your show. Was that kind of like just on the fly, seat of your pants type thing? How was that, work?
Jerem Jordan is maybe the star of day one of Uptempo. Like of all the stuff that we had day one kind of planned, it was all thrown for a loop with obviously hiring Jeff Grimes. I will tell you this. I love this. I'm so glad you asked this. I was sitting at my kitchen table. We knew it was going to happen. We had a very good idea that the first 3 days, Jeff Grimes, somebody was going to be hired as the OC. I'm sitting at my kitchen table eating my cereal, doing my last second stuff before the show, and I get the notification. And I saw it. I was calm. I knew, okay, now we've got to go into overdrive and figure something out. I had no idea. I didn't know anybody at BYU. I find this guy named Jerem Jordan on Twitter and send him a DM. And I've learned that if you make things sound really important and immediate, people will treat them really. And so I was like, Jerem, we need an emergency guest right now. BYU, Jeff Grimes, can you please come on our show? And so he responds within a half hour. It's like, hey, man, I can do it. Yeah. And so we get him on, and little did I know, the guy would come on with this huge TV setup and like this he just had this whole profession. It looked like he was on the set of ESPN. Mm-hmm. And he comes on the show and he offers what I can only call, expert analysis on Jeff Grimes. Right. And that interview was set up 45 minutes before he actually came on the show. And stuff like that has kind of driven us. Like I said, if something's immediate, then we want to push content that matters now. And that was part of that. So I will thank the Twittersphere for giving us Jerem Jordan day one and Jeff Grimes.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And, you've interviewed a lot of guests since. I guess, who's been your favorite interview, across everything that you've done so far?
We've had Casey Lightfoot twice, and that's been big just because if you talk about what matters the most right now, to me, it is so enamoring that he sits in a college class every day knowing he'll be an Olympian and has a shot at a gold medal. So to have somebody with that kind of magnitude on before they have that magnitude, to know that maybe he's not a national hero yet, but he will be, has been probably the coolest. That's the only one that I can tell you, the guest that I brought on that I've just been kind of tripping over my words and just caught in the moment with. Yeah. Outside of that, we've had coaches that have been great. There are a lot of coaches that are underexposed at Baylor when it comes to the smaller sports. And so, Paul Jobson he killed it. I love Paul Jobson. He sent us a soccer ball after the interview. He had a blast. Got a lot of good feedback on Coach McGuire, Casey Maxwell. Scott Drew, as always, just bright-eyed and bushy-tailed. But man, I think if I had to nail down my favorite, we had Sam Pittman today, University of Arkansas head football coach. But my favorite, Isabella Harbison, is a tennis transfer.
Yes.
Who she announced it on a Thursday, and we had her on Friday. She announced at 8 p.m. Thursday night she was coming. We had her on the next day, and you could tell she was just a deer in headlights because she had just decided to make a change on her whole life and move to Waco and play for Baylor. And
she repeat, right, when she decided?
Oh, yeah, like Barcelona. Like we were finding out, like she had left Alabama 10 days ago, and she was in Barcelona, and now she's in Houston, and we were going through that. And for me, it was, okay, I don't know anything about this girl. This girl doesn't know anything about me. We're going to have to find our way through this interview to put content out that people care about. And I remember I was almost in tears after the interview was over, just knowing how well that things progressed, knowing that our show was welcoming her first glimpse into Baylor. She had not had a conversation with the SIDs yet. Like nobody knew anything about her. And we were the ones that got to put Isabella Harbison through to the Baylor crowd. And that was just cool for me. It gave me a lot of respect and just kind of reiterated my passion for Baylor. Just knowing that somebody like her, Barcelona, Spain, could end up here and fall in love with the same place that I love so much. It was unbelievable. I know it's kind of a wild card for my favorite interview, but I think that one's going to be tough to beat.
No, there's, I mean, it's kind of what we're in the business of, right? Storytelling. And, you know, we're fortunate enough and privileged enough to, you know, kind of tell the stories with, you know, of other people that might not get nationally or even, you know, locally recognized. And, yeah, I think you pointed out some good examples with KC and Coach Jobson and Isabella. So obviously you guys are doing great stuff over there with the new show. You feel like you're, you know, Scott Van Pelt, you know, on his radio show. I think, you know, his story was like he kind of got tapped on the shoulder a couple times to do like some golf tournaments and reporting coverage that way. And so, you know, you're well on your way for sure. You know, so congrats on that. Moving into, you know, let's talk about what's on the forefront. You know, Baylor basketball. I would love to kind of talk about that with you and pick your brain, but let's, you know, we can start with the men and then kind of move on to the women. But, you know, Oklahoma State this weekend, Cade Cunningham. What do you like about this Baylor men's basketball team?
Oh man, that's the same question that I ask everybody else, and I get the same answer every time. It's the what is there not to like? And it's generic, it's the truth. And as I watch this team from an analyst perspective, and you know, I get to do the beat reporting for SicEm365 with men's basketball. And one of the things that really just stands out to me is that at any point in time against anybody in the country, they can go on a 12-0 run. That's what makes them so deadly, is that with the depth of guards that they have, they can go on a 12-0 run when it matters. And they do. That's when it matters. I think I wrote it in an article a couple of weeks ago, is that if it needs to be done, the Baylor men's basketball team is going to get it done. And that's just how it is. That's how it's been for them all season. I think on the other side of that, that's my number one, is their ability to go on runs that are game defining. Number two, what impresses me the most, what I love about this team, is their depth. Is that you're facing Jared Butler and Maceo Teague, and then the second they check out, now you got a Matthew Meyer out there, or an Adam Flagler, or an LJ Cryer. And what do you do with that? If you're an opposing coach and opposing player, you don't get a break. And so I think those two things stick out to be the most right now. I'll tell you, Andrew, I still have questions. Like I don't want to sit here and just really give Baylor all this credit without saying, hey, there are areas where I feel like the streakiness of this team may go to hurt them eventually. The fact that they can go on a 12-0 run, but inverse, they can give up an 8 or 10-0 run, and you've seen that at times. Yeah. So I think if Baylor can keep the on switch on, there's nobody in the country that can stop them. It's just a matter of when you're playing a Texas, a Kansas, a Texas Tech, and you let them go on a run and get back into it, can they hold on late in every game? And I still don't know.
Yeah, that's interesting because there certainly are those questions. I think they can, you know, tighten it up just a little bit, but I think that, you know, we've seen them prove a lot last weekend with wins against Tech and Kansas, to where I think I feel a little bit more comfortable about those runs, so to speak. So I think they're a little bit overblown. That's just my take on that. How was the Kansas game? You were at the Farrell Center, correct? How was that? How was that environment? It reduced crowd, but huge, big Monday game, top 10 showdown. What was that like?
You know, Phil Elson is a good buddy of mine. Phil does the play-by-play for the University of Arkansas baseball team. And Phil tweeted a while back that first game back, where it's full capacity and the national anthem plays, he said, "I'll cry like a baby." And I retweeted it. I wholeheartedly agree. The first time I get back in an arena with a full capacity crowd in any, you know, national anthem or not, just being there, I know that I'll be emotional. But saying that, little did I know that the same reaction, that I could be just as emotional in a crowd of 2,500 people. Legitimately, when the national anthem played, just looking around and seeing what Baylor fans had put together. You know, Andrew, I've been to plenty of Baylor games with 2,500 people before when it's not a pandemic. But the thing is those are typically games where not everybody's there to yell. In this situation, everyone was there to be as loud as possible. They answered the call. And honestly, it is tough to describe how uplifting and encouraging it was to see that many people that loud, that kind of atmosphere. I can't tell you of another example I can think of in the country where a crowd has affected a game like that yet, post-COVID. Baylor, and the Farrell Center is loud in general, But that was a special sports experience for me that I will not forget, even more so than last year's college game day against Kansas. That's the loudest game I've ever been to. But then this year, that 2,500, the moment itself topped it.
What did it rival last year's in terms of noise wise, or was it like last year's was definitely louder because there's more? It's obviously full capacity, but this year it was just like, we battled through COVID and finally, just to see some people in the stands, and obviously they were all loud, doing everything they could. That that was just an emotional moment. What was the difference there, I guess?
Yeah, I think last year with almost 11,000 people was hype loud, and this was heart loud. I think they're two very different kinds of loud. One rings a lot more in the ears than the other, and that's really what this year was. Is, hey, it might not be deafening necessarily, but it's been so long since I've had to yell at the beat reporter to my right to say something. And I had to, like those are the moments you kind of live for as someone in sports media. There's the adrenaline rush of, man, this is big time. And it felt like that. If you close your eyes in that arena, you would have thought, oh, there could be 10,000 people here. It was tough to mask the fact that it was only 25% capacity. And so granted, it may not have been as deafening. I've seen some Baylor games that have just been really exhilarating, but that's hype loud. The heart loud, that'll make your ears ring in a better way.
Wow, that's so great. And it was a big game. Mark Vital had two huge plays in the middle parts of both halves, and Jared Butler went for 30 points. I mean, just so good. And I want to just ask you a question about, you touched on it already. Their depth. They're so deep, and everybody can kill you. They got 6 great guards, and they got really energetic front court with the bigs. To you, obviously there's a little bit, I would agree, there's a little bit that they can work on and touch up on with turnovers and things like that. But how good is this Baylor team? How far can they go? And we talk about Gonzaga versus Baylor, other teams. What do you see kind of long term?
When I compare the two squads, and that's, I agree. I think it's Baylor and Gonzaga and everybody else. I think Baylor, Gonzaga, it's tough to say either team's a lock for the Final Four, but there's no one as consistent as those two teams right now. I think, honestly, Gonzaga has the best starting 5 in the country. Gonzaga has 3 of the top 10 players in the nation. Baylor has the deepest team in the country. And I think on top of that, Baylor has the best team in the country because of the depth. Your starters can only go so far. You can't play 5 guys 40 minutes, and Baylor just has an arsenal off the bench that's really unmatched, and I think that'll be sustained for the next couple of years as well. So when I look at Baylor right now, granted, I know I mentioned a couple of holes because nobody's perfect. There are always places to improve. But for Baylor, they're playing the best basketball that I have seen. I mean, even looking at last year, that 24-win run was unbelievable. But you step into this season and it feels so much more sustained. There's this certain level of consistency to it. I know I talked about being streaky, but the consistency in the way they deliver is just, it's almost unmatched in college basketball in the way they win every game by 8 or more points. It's unbelievable. So I think Baylor obviously has national championship capabilities. And what I think is going to be so tough, Andrew, and it's a question that no one has answered this for me, between coaches and players just indefinitely. And that is, what matters more, playing an easy conference slate so you're well rested going into the tournament, or playing a tough conference slate so you're prepared going into the tournament? And I can't get an answer on which is more important. I think it depends on the team. So does Baylor go through the Big 12 gauntlet, go undefeated in the Big 12 gauntlet, get to the tournament and be worn out? Or do they take 3 or 4 off the chin in Big 12 play and they're ready to rock come March? I think that's a big question right now. But Andrew, I legitimately will be surprised if you and I are not at the Final Four with this Baylor team covering what I think is the best men's basketball team in the country.
And in the country, I agree. I think I would even say Gonzaga, I've seen a few of their games, right? They've gone on some streakiness as well. And they've, been challenged, albeit in the first half, but by some of those West Coast teams like San Francisco and Pacific and BYU, teams like those. So, I think they're trying to work through the same kinks that Baylor is. And I would agree. I think that's got to be the national championship matchup. And, my bold take would be they're not only the best team in the nation, Baylor, but they're also, historically across college basketball have an opportunity to be the best team ever, especially if they can stay healthy and go unbeaten, because that to me would really seal the deal. And I think it is because they're so deep. Anybody can take you out on any given night. I think against Texas Tech, right, it was Mitchell and Flagler that led the team in scoring, and then turn around 48 hours later and it's Butler dropping 30 and Maceo Teague doing what he does there with the bigs kind of filling in key holes. So they win in a variety of ways, and I agree. I think the Final Four is definitely the expectation. But to answer the question, I think it does matter to be tested like Baylor has been.
I think you say historically one of the best teams, and my mind even goes back to the John Wooden era. I mean, look at those Houston teams that were so dominant. You go into UNLV, really good UCLA teams again in the 90s, Duke, Kansas, Kentucky.
Yep.
For me, you look at that. People always talk about the Kentucky team that lost. They were, I think, 37-0 going into the game.
Yep.
38-0 going into the game against Wisconsin a few years back. And that team, if you ask John Calipari, I guarantee you say, John, would you have taken one loss in the regular season to win a national championship? He'd say yes. Mm-hmm. Absolutely, he'd say yes. So I think Baylor is going to kind of be the same thing. If they show up undefeated, my worry is at what point does the wear and tear and just the pressure of being undefeated weigh on a team to the point where something breaks? So my thing is Baylor could lose 2 or 3 games this season of the regular season, win a national championship, and they should still certainly be considered for a top 5 team in the history of college basketball.
Yeah, it would be very interesting. Of course, we have to see the season play out, and my claim only really holds up if they go, one or 2 losses on the year and win that national title, particularly over Gonzaga. But it's a fun little debate that I at least have internally with myself, on a daily basis. So that's Baylor men's basketball. I think, there's so much excitement. One thing I'll say, I love the hype loud versus heart loud comparison that you made. I thought last year's men's basketball team, I thought they played with a lot of heart because they had to be gritty and, unpolished and diving on the floor for loose balls. And they still do that this year. But I just feel watching this year, they just look that much better, which I think should be scary for everybody else.
Oh, no, I agree. I think experience is a big part of that. Like you said, they're gritty. They still do a lot of that work, but now they're older. And that's just the scariest part is they're gritty, but a year older. And that there's so much to be said about having a program where guys stick around. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. We'll see what happens. Right. And, can't look past Oklahoma State. I was curious what coverage and what you've been seeing on the women's side with, Kim Mulkey's crew and their team. I know that they just recently lost to Iowa State, and that was kind of their first day back in 2 weeks. And they had practice in the morning, game in the evening, and just tried to throw it together. But what have you guys been hearing over there at SicEm365 and, talking to, those players and coaches?
Yeah, we had Jaden Owens on the show yesterday and kind of talked to her about that whole COVID hiatus. A little bit, Kim Mulkey does a really good job of keeping things under wraps in her program, as in they're not very public with what goes on the inside, and I love that. I think that's the best way to do it. It's the same as look at what the football program does. No one had any idea who the offensive coordinator would be. You throw out all the names you want, no one had any idea. Kim's a lot like that, and I appreciate that out of her. I say that to say as well that I don't think anybody knows exactly what those 2 weeks look like when COVID really just dropped the bottom out of that team. But man, Andrew, I felt like they were finally starting to click, getting into conference play. Yeah. Coming into the UConn game, I think they were ready for UConn. They were I thought they would beat UConn and Waco, and that would be the catalyst that took them through another undefeated Big 12 season, which they've been no stranger to in the last few years. And then when COVID hits, and you don't know, you lose your head coach for 2 weeks, you come back, you only get 1 practice. I thought it was bold of the team to say, yes, we will play against Iowa State. I thought that was really admirable for the program. But, really, I think that 2 weeks set them back all the way to the start of the season, because you're staring down the barrel of so many new things and questions. So the Oklahoma State game was huge for them. I think they're going to beat Oklahoma pretty badly tomorrow night too. They're going to need those games though. They're going to need games to win that build their confidence back to where it was, because they were so dejected after Iowa State. I have not seen Kim like that, and I've seen her after losses. Obviously she's not perky, but man, after that Iowa State loss, you could just tell there was something that this team was really they were in a dark place because of COVID and what that had done to the program. But I think they're getting back from that. They're not in full stride yet. They won't be for a while, but it's the Big 12 slate. And on the women's side, compared to the men's side, the women's side gives you a lot more room to keep improving game by game and find places that you can pull out key high points. And so I think they do that. And man, I don't know. Really, from what we're hearing in the last couple of weeks has just been they are doing everything they can from a coaching standpoint to get the team back on track, because it's so tough when every bit of consistency just falls through.
Yeah, I'd agree. They lost to your Razorbacks, your Hogs, early in the season. I wasn't sure about UConn. I felt confident going into that game, but UConn's good, and so I wasn't sure. But are they a Final Four team? Do you think that once they get kind of their pieces back and healthy, they can make a Final Four run as well?
This is a tough one too. I asked Bruce Geetson this question today, and Bruce said yes, and he's seen them closer than almost anyone in media the last couple of years. I would say, do they have the potential? Because of Kim Mulkey, yes. Are they a Final Four team? Can you lock them in as a Final Four team? Obviously, no, there's no lock. And right now, I see Baylor probably going out at their current caliber, where they are, at Sweet 16, Elite 8. It reminds me a lot. I think it was Oregon State that bumped Baylor a few years back. Reminds me a lot of that season where it's just, things kind of come together every now and then. But it's not, okay, we put it together consistently. So right now I don't see them as a Final Four team. I think there's a lot of heavy firepower at the top of the nation. That said, you could have a situation where Stanford goes and loses 4 girls due to COVID, and can't play late in the year, or maybe the same thing that happened to Baylor happens to South Carolina or happens to UConn, and then what? They're right back to ground zero. So right now I don't see them as a Final Four team. I think they have the potential to do it, but I am a realist enough to say where they currently sit, I think they're about a year out. I think next season they're going to be really special, but this year there's still a lot of kinks that probably need to smoothen out before they're a Final Four team.
I would agree with you on the fact that they're not a lock. It's very hard to sit here and say anybody's a lock for the Final Four, especially when you take into account COVID. But yeah, they weren't not a lock, but I was feeling a lot more comfortable when what you alluded to, of them getting into a groove and then being shut down because of COVID. I was feeling much more comfortable and hey, they're hitting a groove. They're going to figure this out. I feel a lot more confident kind of going into that tournament that they can get there because they have Mulkey, because they have, player experience that had been there in Tampa a couple of years back. I don't know. It's just
possible. Anything's possible.
Anything's possible. I think they just have to rebuild and kind of get back into that groove. I think they're going to, need Dejanay Carrington to take a lot of the ball handling duties because, DD can't do it all herself at the point guard position. So I think that's kind of the piece they're missing. They need that extra, ball handler type thing. And that's really hurt them the past couple of nights. So, but we'll see. Anything's possible. I would love to kind of be going back and forth between Indianapolis and San Antonio. That would be the dream. So
they can do it. If they get back on the stride, if you'd asked me a month ago, I would have said yes.
Yeah.
I like this team for the Final Four. And if they get back to that level, it's just, the toughest part too is there's not really anybody in the Big 12 they can prove it against. There's no top 10 team that they're going to square up with that you think, okay, tonight's the night where they really grind their teeth and show that they'll be a Final Four squad. So we won't know. We legitimately will not know until we get into the Sweet 16, the Elite 8, which I think they're locked for.
Yeah, that's that was what the UConn game was supposed to be for. So unfortunately, that that can happen. So,
Yep.
Drake, I want to hit you with some quick round robin questions kind of before we go here. Really appreciate you being on the show. If you're cool with that, I'll dive right in.
Look, it's like Bear games. I'm playing my own Bear games right now. That's what it feels like. Bring it on.
Bear games on the minor lounge. All right. What is your weirdest or most embarrassing moment as a media member, whether that's on air or something that happened in a press box or anything like that? Weirdest or most embarrassing?
I have one embarrassing one that in on air that I can't that I don't want to ever come up again. And it was just a stupid. I didn't even say anything that was kind of off the cuff or really would have gotten me in any trouble. But it's something that if I feel like if I go on the record with it, it's just taboo. But I will give you. I say that to note that it happens pretty often. That
Sure.
I say often that things will go down where you just go, "That was stupid. Why did I do that?" We were in, no, not Norman, Austin. We were in Austin for a volleyball match, and I used the urinal right next to Tom Herman. And that's one of my favorite, freshman year is my first time to ever go on a road trip media. And I go out, I'm in the bathroom, and I go up to the urinal and I look to my right and I was like, oh, whoa, that's Tom Herman. So I didn't say anything, obviously. I just kept it under wraps at what a strange place to run a Tom Herman. And so he goes off and so I turn back around and I see this guy, he's a UT fan, standing behind him. And I didn't say a word, but I gave him the look. And then I looked over at Tom Herman and then I looked back at the UT fan. The UT fan goes and just nods as if yeah, that's him. He was validating that, yeah, Tom Herman's in the bathroom with us right now. That was at Gregory Gymnasium in Austin. I had been at Baylor for a month and a half. I was a freshman. I was so new to everything. It's wow, Tom Herman's right here. What a strange place. So I don't know if that's really necessarily embarrassing by any means, but the oddity of that, just that was kind of my story for the rest of freshman year was that, yeah, I ran into Tom Herman in a restroom.
You didn't go and try to conduct an interview right there in the restroom?
I didn't. I thought about it. Yeah, at the sink. I thought about being splashing some water on him, maybe starting conversation, but no, nothing ever brewed.
Yeah. And now your careers are headed in two separate directions. So
yeah. I hate to be him in comparison to me. I'm sure Tom Herman wishes he was in my spot right now.
Right. That's wild. Callers. You take a lot of callers. You got a lot of people calling in. I guess what's the best call that you've ever had on air or favorite maybe?
That's a good question. Honestly, I think it's a very fitting question. For a couple of days ago, we had a caller that called in, and Skylar Wetzel was on our show, Baylor football player, and he just kind of poured his heart out about how Skylar and Skylar's family helped bring Baylor out of the ashes of scandal, and it was really a heartfelt call. And Skylar on the show said, hey man, you send me a message, I want to send you a jersey. It meant that much to him. So that caller host connection that we had in that was really neat. I really have three. The second one would be Mary Hall, which is Sam Hall's grandma, called our show twice in the span of a week to vote for Sam to be Baylor's second best player in our bracket. And so the second time she called, it was her and Bill. Bill was her partner, as she called him. And she told us, because Sam and Holly, brother and sister, Holly Hall, were going to come on that day. And she called. They were supposed to come on at 1:05. It was 11:30. And Mary says, hey, calling in the show to figure out where Sam and Holly are. All I see is you guys right now. I'm wondering if you can change the camera to show Sam and Holly. And she's probably 80s, 90s. And so we had to explain to her that it wasn't that they were on the show at 1:05 and it was only 11:30, and that they wouldn't be on the screen yet, but that when that came that we would. So we kind of had to walk her through that on the air.
Well, holding you accountable, Drake.
Right. She was super upset. She was like, I asked, kind of in jest, I was like, so you want me to go away from the screen and them to be on the screen? And she was like, yeah, okay, sweet. But outside of those two, we have the Baylor Bigfoot shtick, guy that calls in and is just he had some really good, he just has good content. It's a parody, a guy that just calls in to have a good time and be goofy. And I love calls like that. We take a lot of really weird off the wall random calls from time to time, but the ones that somebody calls in and they've got something to say, And it's either funny or passionate. Those are the ones that really mean a lot and are the reason that I love our show.
Well, one of my questions on here is, I think you're the mastermind of Baylor Bigfoot. I 100% believe that. I don't think you can convince me otherwise. I think, like, basically I would say that you're Baylor Bigfoot, except you probably can't be on the screen and making the call at the same time. But I think you're the mastermind.
You know, Andrew, I wish I could tell you that I was or had any, the best part for me, I think the best part is that it's so unexpected. I have no idea. Honestly, I have no idea who it is or what they do. And I think that's the best part, is that people always ask me, like, I know you know who that is, and that you're pumping the content to them. My parents even have this whole conspiracy theory where I know him and we go back a ways. But he calls in the show. He actually called in the afternoon show before he ever talked to us. He kind of found his footing on our show, but it was the afternoon show. People underestimate. And then he followed me on Twitter, and it was kind of history after that, just kind of tweeting stuff at us. And I have my own conspiracy theories about it, but my favorite part of the whole thing is that I have no idea who it is. We do have his phone number. We found his phone number, but I don't even want to know who it is at this point. I love the anonymity that comes with it. So I don't know if I can say that I'm a Baylor Bigfoot fan, but I definitely am kind of enamored with the conspiracies that are surrounding Baylor Bigfoot.
Yeah, so you have your own little, like, lounge, hidden hideout, and you go in there, and the other, Baylor Bigfoot's actually there. I know you know who he is, but that's just
some content.
Moving forward, what's a your favorite movie?
Oh, I actually love answering this one because of just really, because I feel people my age don't appreciate it enough, and people of my age haven't seen it. Shawshank Redemption. I know it's very vague to say people my age haven't seen it. I know there are a lot that have, but most of the time when I say that to anybody that's remotely, I'm 20, anybody that I say that to around my age, they're always like, oh, what's that? And it just makes my heart sad. But I love it. I love Shawshank Redemption. I could watch it 1,000,000 times over. I don't. I space it out, so I make sure I don't get tired of it. But I show that movie to every person that I meet. If we're going to watch a movie, we're watching Shawshank Redemption.
Fair enough. Do you have a TV series or show that you binged over, the quarantine?
I am the most generic person in the world saying The Office, but I wish I could show you. I almost turned my computer around to show you, but I remembered that I'm Zooming. But I have a bunch of stickers on the back that are all Office stuff. I've got a few Office jackets and shirts. I like it less now than I did 3 years ago because of how cliche it's become to like The Office. But really, honestly, it's the same. I'll just have it on TV all the time when I can, and I love it. I really fell in love with The Office. It's my kind of humor.
Yeah, sure. Favorite episode in there? What's your favorite?
Oh, okay. So season 3, episode 1 is the Michael Scott, Dunder Mifflin Race for the Cure, Fun Run Celebrity Program, Race for the Cure. And so many things happen in that episode that are monumental parts to the show moving forward. It's where you find out that Pam and Jim are dating. There's a ton of stuff that goes on in that episode that really breaks it down. I say that. Sorry, I think I'm on season 4. I think I'm at season 4. So
I was going to say, was it 4, I think, is that first one?
It was 4. Episode 1, season 4, now that I think about it, is, but season 3, episode 1 is like my second or third favorite. So that's why.
Sure. Season 3 is great, yeah.
But yeah, episode 1 of season 4, Michael Scott, Dunder Mifflin Program, Race for the Cure, unbelievable. So good. So that would be my one for sure.
Gotcha. I'll throw mine in there. I like the fire drill one, the one that was aired after the Super Bowl. That one.
Episode 15. Come on, Andrew Miner, bring it on. It's a good one. It's a good one.
It's fantastic. I love that. That's probably my favorite one. Favorite sport to play. What's your favorite sport to play if you're gonna do something?
So I tell people I was the captain of my 9th grade football team, which was my last year of football. I decided the whole town was very upset when I decided not to play football anymore. No, I was not very good on a not very good team, which inversely made me better than I should have been. So I would say football I loved a lot, and I had an affinity for baseball. I was a pitcher, and there's just something about being a pitcher in baseball that just gives you a crazy adrenaline boost. But I would say now, and I didn't appreciate it then like I do now, basketball. I'm 6'4", so we'll go out and play low hoops or just go out and play with the boys. And I'm not great, but being tall makes you at least okay. So we'll go out and hoop, and I love to play. You can do it whenever you want. Like throw some tennis shoes on and just grab a basketball. So I'm a big basketball guy right now.
Okay. And your favorite leisure activity? If you're not in studio, if you're not doing anything else that you're doing, what's your favorite kind of leisure activity?
Leisure activity. I wish I was more I wish I consistently leisured if we can make it a verb. But man, here's the deal. I'll say this. What I love, it's so odd because this is a terrible, like people will say riding a bike or going swimming or something, which is admirable. Mine's awful. But I like the mornings that I can sleep in, which is few and far between. But when they come, I really love sleeping in. And then I will go sit on my couch. I have a recliner in my living room. And I'll open up all the blinds of the house. Natural light comes in. I will open up a black cherry vanilla Bang energy drink. And I'll sit there and just watch whatever's on TV. But all it is just sitting, looking out my window and just a moment of peace almost. It's so weird. I know. But I love, for some reason, that's got to be my favorite leisure activity, I guess.
Black cherry Bang?
Black cherry vanilla Bang. I'm not sponsored by Bang, and we should be. I will say that till the day I die. I drink one on every show every day. It's free advertising for them. They should be sending me free drinks.
Understood. Well, that's what you want. You just sometimes you need that leisure. Throw on The Office.
Yeah.
Type thing. I wanted to ask you also. Way before you were even on SicEm365. Radio and doing all this. You posted some Twitter videos where you had 10 days without dates, and I watched a couple as they came across my timeline on Twitter or whatever. I must say I don't think I truly understood the whole purpose, but they were hilarious as hell. And I thought they were so funny, and I didn't really understand what was going on, but I wanted to ask you and kind of let you explain that. What was the idea behind that?
Yeah, that was my first trek into the acting world, and being like a vlogging content creator. And I gotta say, it was the single most fun but stressful thing I've done in my life. So Brooklyn and Bailey, the famous twins, like 5.8 million followers on Instagram and another 6 million on YouTube. They are cardboard. There are cardboard cutouts of them in every JCPenney's in America, and they go to Baylor. So I am friends with them, connected with them. Well, Bailey has had a boyfriend for years. Brooklyn has not. So they set her up on 10 dates in 10 days where she got to go on a date, one a day. So one day my buddy and I are sitting around and I was like, you know what I could do? I could go 10 days without 10 dates. I could make that happen. And he was like, yeah, well, me too. How tough could that be? So we kind of laughed about it. And then a couple weeks later, I sent him a text and was like, hey, I want to do something with that. I'm going to post a picture on my Instagram story and be like, hey, do you guys think I could go 10 days without 10 dates? Because that was a big thing around Baylor since they go here, the twins. And so he said, well, don't do that because I want in on it. And so we decided to start vlogging. And that at Drake C. Toll is my Instagram. The entire series is still up on my highlights in my Instagram. It's like the best 8 minutes that you could possibly imagine. We started off so very just grassroots, kind of doing things on Zoom. And by the end of it, we had a production crew. We were scripting episodes. There were side character plots and these whole loopholes and different actors and people that we bring on. It was maybe the single weirdest thing I've done in college, and I loved it. I will show my kids that one day, and I will force them to love it.
Oh, of course. And then the last episode was each of you and your friend went on a date with Brooklyn, right?
Brooklyn night, yeah. So she's super famous, and we're numb to it since we're friends and we have been around her. You have to be. And so I kind of reached out, and we had not really talked much when I reached out to her and just kind of asked. I was like, hey, you want to be in this? And her response was that she had been watching them. This is a whole parody of what she had done. And I really hope that she didn't hate us or make it seem like we were making fun of her or anything. And she was like, no, I love it. I love it. So she agrees to come on, and we sat down in like on a conference call, best I can remember, and did like, okay, what is the plan for this? So, and we scripted out what we were going to do. This is 3 or 4 days before the finale, and scripted everything out. We filmed on a Sunday. I edited all that day and then pumped out the finale. And I got so many texts. Andrew, we released every episode at 8:30 p.m. And I got a text at like 8:25 that was, if the episode doesn't come out at 8:30, I'm showing up at your house and things are going to go bad. Like people were so excited for that to come out because it just had a cult following by the end of it. People were so enamored with these two guys that were doing this random vlog. And then I released the finale. And I just remember the reaction, the texts that start flooding in like, oh my, you got Brooklyn on your show. How did you pull that off? It was the greatest plot twist in vlog history, in my opinion.
It was super hilarious. Obviously I'm not part of that Baylor community. I'm not in it, but I knew it was funny because you did such a great job of just releasing those videos. And I had to ask, so thank you for explaining that. Final question, what's the best game? It could be Turner Spring, could be Baylor football from over the years, could be basketball over the years. What's the best game that you've covered?
Wow, I would say that I've covered, I had a lot. I was the voice of my high school for 2 or 3 years. I'll say it's kind of twofold. I'll go one high school, one college. My first ever game. Okay, threefold. Come on, Andrew. We got a little bit of time.
Hey, it's a lounge. It's all good.
My first game I ever did, the radio program at my high school kind of imploded, and I called and was like, listen, I know I'd never done a game before. I was a sophomore in high school. I was like, I want to do this game. It was a state semifinal baseball game, and our high school was supposed to lose by a lot. We got down 7-1 early. I was doing play-by-play. It was kind of miserable. I was having fun. My first time I was jittery. We were getting killed. And lo and behold, we march it back to like 7-6. And then we have a guy steal home plate, which I've never seen. I have never seen in person until that moment, and I still haven't seen it since. He steals home plate to tie it 7-7. And then late in the game, ended up hitting a walk-off or something crazy and go to the state championship. Unbelievable. My first game I ever did. So I get to do play-by-play in the state championship baseball game and show up at Baum Stadium in Fayetteville, Arkansas, the #1 D1 baseball stadium in the country, and got to call a state title game that we were playing the number 23 team in the country. They were 27-1 coming in, riddled with D1 talent. And our little rinky-dink high school won 8-1 final score to take home a baseball state championship. So my second game I ever covered was doing play-by-play on the radio for high school baseball in the title. College, man, I'm gonna make it fourfold because I think football, I gotta say the Texas Tech game last year, I called play-by-play for, and when JaMychal Hasty ran the ball in the end zone in double overtime to win it, it just felt so surreal. Every moment of that game felt really surreal. Homecoming.
Yeah.
I didn't sleep that day, the night before, so I was just kind of out of it. And then volleyball. UT volleyball in the Farrell Center is something that I will never – that's a memory that I'm sure – it's one of those that's never on the forefront. That when someone asks you, it's not the first thing that comes up in your sports memory repertoire. But it's the one that when it does, when I'm reminded of that game, it'll just be a wow. It's tough to explain what that was like in the Farrell Center that night. 8,000 people at a volleyball game. And to win it in 5 sets, that was unbelievable.
Yeah, that's so four great games. Were you on? Was it Baylor Radio?
So I did Lariat Radio for the Texas Tech game. I worked with the Lariat Radio and then ended up moving into IMG and doing some Baylor work when spring sports came around. So hopefully, if everything works out this spring too, I'll be back doing some ESPN Plus stuff, baseball, softball, soccer and volleyball. I mean, everything's going on this spring. So
right.
There are quite a few opportunities that I think are going to open up again where who knows, maybe, flagship working with Baylor, IMG, doing some stuff for them again would be awesome.
That's great. Drakes, thanks so much for joining the Minor Lounge and, talking about all those great tidbits on your show and giving us some insight into how that came to be and the production aspect of that. go ahead. I'll let you plug yourself real quick. Where can everybody find you and all your great work?
Yeah, thanks, Andrew. So I'll be honest with you, I had a personal website for a while. It was one of those like drake.c.toll at wixsite.com.
Yeah.
But I have now discontinued my Wix site. I'm still working, the website's in the works. But SicEm365.com/live. We go live every Monday through Friday from 11 to 2 on Uptempo, myself and JD Piquel. And then on YouTube, the SicEm365 YouTube. Subscribe to that. It reminds you. My parents have subscribed to that now because sometimes they forget at 11 a.m. to turn the TV on. But there are a lot of ways to access the show and watch it. We put out a lot of content. We're really driving to make things fun. We want it to be an easy, fun listen for people. And so SicEm365.com/live, and you're there. You're there, and hopefully give us a call on the Impact Health Labs caller line and let us know what you think about the show.
Yeah. And most importantly, Drake went 10 days without 10 dates. Drake, thank you so much. Catch him on Uptempo, SicEm365 Radio, and SicEm Bears.
Absolutely. Thanks so much for having me on, Andrew.
Absolutely.